Perfect Partner Podcast is a show for those of you who have not given up on love despite its challenges, where we have those productive conversations about things that can really affect your relationship. I am your host, Erin F. Darton. I am an emotional intelligence and relationship coach, and I am on a journey. I think it's my purpose right now to help you understand the importance of emotional intelligence and building and maintaining healthy romantic relationships. Today, we're talking about ghosting. This is another topic that I let you guys pick. So we are going to talk about ghosting, whether or not it's appropriate, when it may be appropriate. I'll let you guys give your feedback. I'm going to ask questions and let's have a fun conversation. I already have my glass of wine poured already. So let's get started. So I like to start from a baseline. So I want to start with a definition of ghosting. Before I read the definition that I found, tell me what you guys think ghosting is. Like, what do you consider ghosting? Because I think there may be some subjectivity here. I don't know that we all consider the same things ghosting because, I talk about I was having a conversation about ghosting the other day. And I think that there are times where ghosting is appropriate. So let me know, what is your definition of ghosting? And in the meantime, I'm going to pull up the definition that I found on Psychology Today. So based on Psychology Today, ghosting. So somebody said ceasing communication without explanation. Let's see what other comments we have. Okay, so according to Psychology Today, ghosting is abruptly ending communication with someone without explanation. The concept most often refers to romantic relationships, but can also describe disappearances from friendships and from the workplace. Let's see if you guys have anything different. When one leaves without explanation, ghosting to me is when you're dating or talking to someone and then you just drop off without notice. Okay, so I feel like we all kind of have the same definition. So you've been talking to somebody, getting to know somebody. We're going to stick with romantic relationships for now. And you just disappear. So here's my first question. I agree with that definition, but does timing play into your definition of ghosting? Like, does it matter how long you've been talking? Like, if I just met you, let's say Thursday, and I decide, I don't want to talk to you anymore, is that still considered ghosting? It hasn't even been a week. Or does it have to be like you've been talking for some time or there is some depth to the relationship? Because for me, I think that it does make a difference early on. So it's only ghosting if it's early on? Is that what you're saying? And then my other question to you is, have you guys ever been ghosted or ever ghosted someone? And so if I answer, I'm all about being open, honest, and transparent here. So I feel like both. I have been ghosted and I have ghosted people. I won't say that it is my norm. I asked in the community, how do you guys feel about it? And so for the most part, everybody said that they don't agree with it. Kind of grow up, we're grown, communicate type of thing. But if I'm being honest, I have ghosted people before, recently, and I have been ghosted. I'm trying to read the comments at the same time. Timing is everything. If it's early on, then it's fine. I've done both. See, and so that's kind of how I feel. If it's at least 3 phone calls and 1 FaceTime, ghosting is wrong. I need to know, does timing matter when it comes to ghosting? So some of you are saying that if it's early on, it doesn't matter. You can go ahead and ghost somebody. Somebody over here said 3 phone calls and a FaceTime. But what if the 3 phone calls and a FaceTime is like all in one day? Does it matter if it's one day or like maybe it's 1 call a day? So 4 days. and then you stop talking, like it's not okay. I need to know. If it's early on, they'll be okay. So we have different opinions over here, right? So some people say if it's early on, whatever, they'll be okay. If, it doesn't matter how long you've been talking, it's ghosting and it's never okay. So if I'm being honest, I kind of go by the rule of if it's early on, so what? The last person that I ghosted, it was after we met in person for like the first time. And I decided that, well, it doesn't matter why I decided to ghost them, but I felt like it was still early on. So this is the rule of thumb that I go by. You guys don't have to listen to me, right? I don't believe in giving relationship advice. I'm just using myself as an example. My rule of thumb is if the person would be concerned about your well-being, like if you just stopped talking to them and you just disappeared, if they would be concerned about your well-being, I don't think ghosting is appropriate, right? If they would be concerned that, something happened to you and they're going to blow your phone up thinking that you died in a car accident, I think you owe them a conversation. I think if it is early enough in the relationship development and they would just assume that, she don't want to talk to me or he doesn't want to talk to me anymore, I think ghosting is okay. But that's just me. You guys don't have to listen to me. See, people are agreeing with me. That's just me. Because I feel like at that point, there likely isn't much time invested. We haven't spent much time together. And I'm just like, this ain't it. I could tell pretty early on that this ain't, I'm cool. But I feel like I've only ever done it like when it was really early on. Like I said, the last person we met for the first time in person, I had met him on an app. We met in person and I was like, yeah, no. And then just never responded again. So I don't know. You guys might crucify me for that. And I'm okay with that. You're allowed to have your own opinion. Somebody said it depends on what was given. So help me explain. So if, I'm assuming you're talking about sex. So if we had sex, then after sex, then it's no longer appropriate? Is that what you're saying? Or what if you have sex the first date? That's not okay? I mean, because if you have sex the first date, and then, I don't know, maybe somebody wanted sex, money, times, or feeling. And so if you give an abundance, not necessarily an abundance, but if you give a good amount of either of those things, then ghosting is no longer okay. Sex, money, time, feeling. How y'all feel about that definition? Like, does it change? Like, for those of you that said if it's still early on, you don't owe explanation, you can ghost. Does that change if you've had sex within that time frame? Or he spent a lot of money? Or, yeah, I would assume he spent a lot of money in that time. Oh, they said it's up to the giver to determine. But if the receivee is if the receiver is what I'm supposed to say, is the one that's going to ghost, the giver doesn't have a say in this. Right? That's when you go someone isn't interested. But I'm saying, like, I don't know. Does that really matter what you give up in that time frame? If you've had sex, ghosting isn't cool. Okay. Regardless of the time, I gave up my time, so it doesn't matter. Okay. I mean, look, I don't know that for me, I don't know that the activity matters within that time frame. But that's just me. So you guys say, so timing matters, and then what you give up within that time frame also matters. Okay. Have you guys ever been ghosted? I have, and I just, take it on the chin. But that's a real thing, because once being ghosted, how can it affect you? I think being ghosted, of course, it's a form of rejection. And nobody likes to be rejected. Rejection doesn't feel good. I say it all the time. Like, I could never be a man like pursuing somebody, like, because you guys have to deal with the possibility of rejection all the time. So I could never. Well, I don't believe in shooting my shot either. Like, I couldn't deal with the rejection. So I understand ghosting in terms of, feeling like rejection. And that's a real thing. I think when it becomes a problem is when you start to internalize it, right? And you want to know, well, what's wrong with me, or and I don't want you to do that, because just because somebody decided to ghost you, it doesn't mean that anything is wrong with you. Yes, that means that they are no longer interested in you, but even if they're not interested in you, that still does not mean that there's anything wrong with you, right? It just means that you are not the person with whom they think they should move forward with. Right? You don't go to McDonald's looking to buy tires. But that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with McDonald's, right? You just got to make sure that you're at the right place for the right person. So I get it. Rejection doesn't necessarily feel good. But I definitely want to make sure that you're not internalizing it. Yeah, you keep it moving. So a lot of people say they have been ghosted. It's a learning moment. You adjust and move on. But how can you learn if somebody just ghosts you? I think that's different than a breakup. If somebody breaks up with you, right, and they give you an explanation, like, hey, right, maybe that's something that you need to work on. And that's a learning moment. But when you've been ghosted, like, you have like no idea what you did, quote unquote, wrong, at least for that person. And so it can be difficult. Like, how do you turn that into a learning moment? I was ghosted by a guy who I thought was into me, and we spent months getting to know each other. Months is crazy. That's crazy. After months, right? That goes back to what you were saying about the time, what you're giving up, the time, the money, the sex, all of that. Yeah, months is insane. I agree with that. That's wild. But again, I feel like when people do that, I don't think that has anything to do with you, and I hope that you guys don't take it personal. And I know it's hard, right? Because rejection, nobody wants to be rejected. It doesn't feel good to be rejected. But please don't start to wonder like, oh, why not? What's wrong with me? Or it very may well have nothing to do with you, right? A lot of times how people treat you have nothing to do with you, right? And all of them. You don't know if maybe they were on a break with somebody and they decided to spin the block, or like, you don't know. It could be a variety of reasons. But after months, now that's crazy. I think you do owe somebody an explanation after that. The keep it moving phrase sounds like the feelings are numb. So for me, when I say keep it moving after being ghosted, and so I will also say this. I've never been ghosted after there has been a considerate amount of time invested. Like, it's always been in the early stages where I just assume that either he was talking to multiple people and he decided to pursue somebody else, or like there's never been a situation, well, only once, where, going back to my rule that, right, if the person is going to be concerned about you, ghosting isn't okay. That only happened once. And I truly was concerned about his well-being. Like, I thought he died somewhere. Like, but keep it moving. I don't think it's about being numb. I think because it was so early on in the other situations that it was just like like it wasn't long enough for me to have any type of feelings or anything like that. So it's like, damn, that's crazy. Like, I was kind of feeling them. But at that point, what can I do? I'm not going, like, I take it on the chin. I don't think that means my feelings are numb. I don't think that they were just enough to care. Now, the one person where I felt like we were, like, I was concerned about his safety. Like, there had been some time put in, like at least a month or so. I continued to reach out because I literally thought like he might have just been like, he was driving the last time I had talked to him. And so I thought that he maybe ran off the road, ran into a tree. Like, so I continued to reach out and he finally responded. And the explanation he gave was wild. Like, it wasn't wild. It just didn't make sense to me. So even in that situation, it was like I kept it pushing, but I was really concerned about his safety. The other situation that's coming off the top of my head, it was too early for me to have any feelings. So it was like whatever, take it on the chin. He's not interested. I think I've had enough heartbreak to learn that, it's not always about me. It's not always about me doing something wrong, or it's just I wasn't the right person for him. And I'm okay with it. So when I say take it on the chin, that's more so what I mean. Yeah, so somebody said the explanation is always crazy. So I won't say that I'll tell you his explanation. His explanation was he felt like he disclosed too much information to me. And he thought that I was going to try to fix what he had going on. And what I explained to him was, you clearly haven't taken time to like get to know me, because my Superwoman days are over. Like, that's not me. And so I explained to him like what he was thinking was never going to happen. Like, I'm not here to save anybody, like none of that. And so you leaving because you thought I was going to try to fix your life, you got the wrong person. And so we were able to have a conversation about it. But yeah, that's the only one that ever gave me an explanation. Everybody else, I just kind of let it go. Again, because it was more of a time investment, and I really thought he was dead. Does a lack of closure equal ghosting? So here's the thing. I don't believe that there's a such thing as closure. When you are emotionally intelligent, you also don't need closure. Like, closure is not a real thing. A lot of times when people go to seek closure from somebody, they are really giving that person an opportunity to say things or to say something that they want them to say, so that things will change and be different. Right? And so, like, a lot of times when whatever the situation is, sometimes the closure is about, I need to know why. That doesn't change the situation, right? A lot of times I have conversations with people and they're like, but I just need closure. You don't need closure. What you're doing is you're going back in hopes that they say something that's going to be different or change how this situation is playing out. So there isn't really a thing as closure. So I don't know if I could say a lack of closure is ghosting. I think so long as it is communicated from one person to the other that they no longer want to move forward in this relationship, I don't think it's ghosting. Now, I don't know if that answered your question about closure. Like, do you have a different definition of closure? Because I don't think that there's a such thing as a closure. It's a lot of times when I had that conversation, and I've had it with both men, more commonly with women. And they're like, I just need to know why, or I just want him to know how I feel. It's like he knows how you feel. You're just going back hoping that something will be different this time, but it's not. And when I say going back, I mean like revisiting the conversation, hoping that it's going to be different, or it's going to, get a different response, or he's going to say something, or he's going to change his mind, or she's going to change her mind. So closure is not a real thing. Okay, we have a question from the audience. Question: do you give a person another chance if they ghosted you? So in my situation, I will say that I did give him another chance. After he explained that he ghosted me because he thought I was going to come and try and fix his life, and I explained that that's not the situation. That's not what I'm going to do by any means. My Superwoman days were over at that point. Like, I'm not. However, what we then had to have a conversation about was how were things going to be different moving forward, right? You came up with this idea in your head. Next time, I need you to share that with me before you decide. And before you decide how you think I'm going to respond or react, like, don't think for me, or don't try to guess or anticipate my actions and my responses. All right. So we had to have that conversation. I let him come back, but the conversation was, how do we make sure this doesn't happen again? But that's a good question. Have you ever let anybody come back, spin the block after they ghosted you? And the follow-up question is, if somebody did ghost you and they spun the block 6, 7, 8 months, even a year later, how would you respond? I think those are good questions. And for me, I think it would come down to why, like, what happened. I think if somebody, let's say, right, I believe in dating multiple people. So let's say you were dating multiple people and you just decide that there's one person that you want to pursue. And so you just drop everybody else. And let's say it doesn't work out and you try to spin the block. I mean, I could understand why. Like, if you were to be like, oh, okay, and understand, like, you knew that they were dating multiple people. I mean, I can kind of understand it. Now, the explanation and he would have to be a really good wordsmith and, figure that out. Somebody said, no, you're not about to play in my face again. I mean, that's real too. So that's crazy. So once somebody ghosts you, that's it. You're not letting nobody spin the block. Okay, so now, but if they don't ghost you, so if they're honest and say, hey, no, I want to go see what's up with this other person, and then they try to spin the block, you okay with that? Like, I guess that makes sense. Communicate, and then you might be able to spin the block. I could see that. It's hard to come back from ghosting, because what do you say when you come back? Hey, it's me. I know I ghosted you months ago, a year ago, but let me explain. I'm too petty. You can't come back. So help me, because I don't think I'm not really that petty. So what happens with being petty? Oh, the block is hot. I'm working on my pettiness. So, but how would help me understand, how would the pettiness show up? Like, you will let them back and then you ghost them just to be petty? I need to understand, because I'm not really petty. Sometimes I wish I was, but I'm so empathetic and understanding that the pettiness doesn't really work for me. I just need to know, how does it go? Oh, most people saying, no, you can't spin the block. Delete, block, and bye. Yikes. Wow. I mean, I get it. Oh my goodness. So they said, I'm going to get what I want out of you, and then I'm going to keep it moving. Yikes. I'll turn around and ghost you, or let them back and then simply ignore them. Oh my goodness. I mean, I get it. Your feelings are hurt. They ghosted you. I think for me, when I got ghosted, I felt more salty. I don't think my feelings was hurt. I just felt salty. Like, damn, that's crazy. And then come up with some reason why I ghosted you. I get it. So for those of you that have been ghosted, let me tell you, it's not easy coming from somebody that had to learn how to communicate, right? I know people be like, oh my God, you're so confident on video. I was extremely shy growing up. Like, I barely talked to anybody growing up. Didn't say more than 2 words. So I really had to learn how to communicate especially like in relationships. It's okay. I don't want to pose a problem. I'm conflict adverse. Like I don't argue, I don't fight, I don't do any of those things. And so I can see why it's difficult to tell somebody that, hey, I'm not interested anymore. Like that takes a lot, right? If you don't have that confidence already, or if you aren't able to communicate in such a good way already, I understand why people ghost people. I get it, right? I mean, I've learned to communicate now, but I get it, right? It's not easy telling somebody, hey, I'm no longer interested in you, or hey, I don't like this. I don't like. So I totally get why people ghost people. Like, that's not an easy conversation to have. It's just not. So if you've been ghosted before, or if you've been like, what would have been a good way for somebody to communicate to you that they're no longer interested? And then I'll tell you my ideas or other ways that I have, cut people off, because that's not an easy thing, right? And I understand we're saying that ghosting is not cool. We got to grow up, we got to communicate, but communicating it's not that easy, right? I know nowadays we want everybody to communicate, or we expect everybody to communicate, but communicating is not easy, right? Especially if you didn't grow up communicating, nobody ever asked you how how your day was or how you felt. It's not easy. It's not as easy as you think it is. So for those of us that may still be struggling with communication and we think ghosting is easier, what are some ways that somebody can tell you that they aren't interested anymore? Be upfront, honest. No, I want give me actual phrases, because be upfront. It's not let's rewind this. If we were to rewind this conversation 10 years from now, let's rewind it 10 years. I don't know that I was confident enough or mature enough to tell people like, hey, I'm no longer interested. Like ghosting was easier. So I need to know, for those people that are out there that were like me, like what is a good way to say it? Just say you're not interested. I can't make somebody want me. Okay. You've had 3 women try to spin the block telling me how amazing I was, but then I was in my I'm good mode. First of all, I need to put my glasses on. Let's do that so I can see the comment. I don't know if that helped. Maybe I need new glasses. Okay. I've had 3 try to spin the block telling me how amazing I was, but then I was in my I'm good mode. But I appreciate the experience because it made me callous and more assertive. But did they explain? So when they came back, did they explain why they ghosted you? And you just still wasn't feeling their explanation? Okay, so some examples. You guys said, hey, this is not working. Our vibes aren't matching, or we don't want the same thing. I wish you the best. We're not on the same page. You're a great person, but it's not going to work out. I wish you the best. Tell the truth and how you feel. So here's the thing, right? So I agree with some of these statements. Let me tell you how I tell people. We're not on the same page, or this is not going to work out. So some of these statements are going to elicit a why. Because then what do you do then? Right? It's difficult to explain the why. Like if I'm no longer interested and I really want to stop communication altogether, I don't want to open the door for why, because I usually don't want to explain because I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, right? And it's not that it's something wrong with them. They just don't work for me. So I'm always very mindful of a few things when I'm cutting things off. One, I don't bring up things about them that they can't change. Right? So I would never say anything like, oh, you're just not on my level, or, oh, you're just like things that would make them feel bad about themselves or hurt their feelings, things that just don't work for me. I would never bring those things up. Right? Because they are who they are. They're going to be who they are. And I don't want them to feel like just because it didn't work for me, right, they're a terrible person, or those things are bad, or those characteristics are bad. There are just some things that just don't work for me specifically, right? And that's going to be different from person to person. Something that I don't appreciate or don't like in somebody else might love it. So I never, try to point out things that they can't change, or, that somebody else would appreciate about them. I usually always try to put it on me and not them. Right? Oh, I'm just not interested in moving forward. I'm not ready for a relationship. Like, I try to put it on me again, because I don't want anybody to leave our experience worse off than they were. Or like, I try not to hurt people's feelings. So I always try to put it on me. The whole, it's not you, it's me. Like, that's real. I don't think I've never said that to anybody. I don't think. But I always I put it on me. Oh, I'm not ready for a relationship, or, oh, I try to put it on me. I try to take the blunt. I don't have the capacity for a relationship right now, or I put it on me, so that, again, that they don't internalize this. And not that they would, but it's always a possibility with rejection. You never know how people will take rejection. So I always try to put it on me. But the first thing is, I try to cut it off in ways where I don't open the door for conversation. Right? I don't open the door for conversation. So I think the last person that I cut off, what happened was he asked to go out again. And I said, my response was, hey, I don't think we should go out again. Right? I'm not into wasting anybody's time or mine. Right. And I'm not interested in this. That wasn't the last person, but that was a person. The last person, well, he actually made it easy. He knew he had messed up. And so he asked me, like, was I interested? And I just, was honest, like, I'm not interested in pursuing this any further, and left it at that. That is probably the only person that I wish would have asked me why, because he needed to hear some things about himself, but he didn't ask, so I didn't offer it. But that's the only person I think I've ever wanted to actually explain to why I was no longer interested in pursuing it. The only person. And I was hoping that he asked me why. But again, I don't volunteer why unless they, they're in a place to really hear it, because, it's me. But that was the last guy. He was the only one that I wish had asked me why. But I usually don't leave that door open. Oh, wait a second. I thought I saw a question, but it went away. I thought somebody said, I don't know. I read a question that said, but what if they're willing to change? So it depends on what it is. Usually, if I am no longer interested, it's for something that is like, oh, she deleted the question. But I think it was a good question. Like, what if they're willing to change? And I think that is why last week we were talking about vetting a partner, right? I think it's important to know which things are non-negotiables and which things are preferences. And so I usually am no longer interested because of non-negotiable things. Or I realize that our personalities, like, we can't have fun together. Like, we're not going to be friends. Like, this just doesn't work together. Right? So not the things that they can change, or that I wouldn't even want them to change, right? the things that the reasons I'm no longer interested are things that, like, this is your personality, and I don't want you to change who you are, right? I think I mentioned this last week. I'm not in the business of trying to change somebody, right? I'm just going to understand who you are and then decide as whether or not you should be in my life or we can do this long term, like that. So I think it depends. And I think that's why you have to be careful about opening a door to explanation. Because for one, if I'm truly done, there's nothing to talk about. Because if they don't feel the same way that you feel, there's a chance that they're going to try to change your mind. And they might even say, oh, I can work on that, or I'll change that. But maybe it's something that they shouldn't be trying to change, right? That's who they are. Maybe they're compromising too much if they try to change that thing. Somebody said, I explain why. I don't mind explaining why, because I would want an explanation. So if you don't mind sharing, like, what are some of the things that you've shared as to why you were no longer interested? Because I think that's it. Like, I never explain. Like, I always just keep it with the, I'm not interested in this, or I don't think we should. So I think I literally never explain. So help me understand, or if you're willing to share, like, what is some reasons that you've cut somebody off and like how you explain that. And I'll say this, if you do ghost somebody, I don't necessarily think that makes you a bad person. Like I was saying earlier, I think it's more telling of your communication style and, right, your ability to have difficult conversations. And honestly, if you have to ghost me and you can't simply tell me like, hey, this is not what I'm interested in, right? That means you may not have the skills to be a good partner, because if difficult conversations are a part of a relationship, and if we can't have that, things may not work out. Okay, so you said you only explained to one person what he was doing really bothered me. Now, what he was doing, is that something that he could have changed? Is that why you explained? Or is it like, because for me, if something bothered me and I'm willing to walk away from it, I don't want to explain. I don't know. I'm a single mother, and it's not always easy to get a babysitter. He would schedule dates and then at the last minute cancel or not answer his phone. Okay. And so when you explain to him, like, what was his response? Like, did he offer to do better or change it? See, like, did he offer to do better or change it? Because that is usually the conversation that I'm trying to limit. Like, if I am truly done, right? Maybe it's happened 20 times. Like, after one or two times, maybe I'll say something to you. But if you continue to do it, right, clearly you don't, I feel like at that point you don't respect my time. And so at that point, I don't want to have the conversation. Okay, yeah. So it was something that he could have, but he didn't want to. I get it. Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's interesting. I feel like I think there is a difference between having a difficult conversation about things that I want changed in our relationship or experience, and a conversation about I'm done. I think those are two different things, right? If the conversation is, if my decision is I'm truly done with this situation and there is nothing that you can do to fix this, I don't even want you to try, that is when I am very intentional about how I word the conversation. And I make sure that it is a statement and that I don't leave the door open. Right? Communication is a big part of emotional intelligence. Like, you have to know, right, how to say things. And so that's a big thing that I help people with. Like, even my friends, they're like, this is what I said, and this is this and this, and this is. And I'm like, but that what you said to the person and your intent are not the same thing. Like my friends text me about like, can we practice? Can we practice before I go and talk to him? And I'm like, yeah, sure. And like, so you have to be mindful of what you're going to say and how the person may receive it, right? You have to know your person and how they may receive it. And so if I know that I am truly done with this situation, I'm not leaving the door open. The how I word it is very much different than if it's a conversation about, hey, I don't like this thing and I want us to work on it. Two totally different things. So you say he didn't want to work on. So when you brought it to his attention about canceling at the last minute, it was clear he didn't want to work on it, but he wanted to be friends. That's interesting. I don't want to work on a situation, but can we be friends? That's interesting. That's very interesting. I think the other time, I think ghosting is okay. Like we already mentioned earlier, that if it's early on, that at least I think ghosting is okay. Of course, the other situation is if it's a safety concern, right? If you fear of the person's reactions, maybe physical violence or whatever, after you tell them, of course, it's always okay to block them. To ghost them at that point. But I don't know. I think ghosting. I think it's an interesting thing. I know for the most part, most people don't believe that it's okay. But sometimes y'all be crazy. And to just save myself the headache, I'm going to just go ahead and, I don't know. But I agree that overall ghosting is not okay. But I think people do ghost people when they aren't comfortable with asserting themselves. And so if you feel like ghosting is your only option, or if you have a hard time telling somebody, I think the way that I look at it is that this is my life, and anybody that I allow to be in my life should be a positive addition. And so it's not that you are rejecting a person. There's no way around that. But I think if you say it in the most respectful way as you can, and you limit what you say, just simply keep it as a, hey, I'm not interested in this, or hey, this isn't working for me. Even though this is not working for me, I'm hesitant to say, because they're going to ask why or what can they do to fix it. Like, I think you got to make sure that you truly are no longer interested, and there's nothing that they can do to fix, right? To fix what's going on. For those of you that have ghosted somebody like me, do you guys feel like that's going to stay up your sleeve? Like, would you ghost somebody again, or would you maybe say something to them next time, or the next person that you're no longer interested in? Can ghosting cause trauma? I think that it can. I think ghosting can cause trauma if the person that is rejected personalizes it, and they start to go down that rabbit hole of, why me? Like, what's wrong with me? Why doesn't this person want to be with me? Wait, I'm sorry. That comment, I'm ghosting someone now. Why are you ghosting somebody now? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to laugh. It just caught me off guard. Why are you ghosting somebody now? That made me laugh. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to laugh. Why are you ghosting somebody? And so we have another comment over here in the studio. If we take time knowing what we want, we don't have to get ghost. I don't know if I agree with that. Because I think even if we know what we want, right? Last week, again, we talked about vetting a potential partner. So let's say you do all of the right things. Let's say you know exactly what you want. And, right, there is no substitute for time and getting to know somebody, right? Let's say the person has all of the things on a non-negotiables, right? Y'all want the same type of relationship. You both want to get, if it's marriage, you both want the same type of family. You both practice the same religion. So, like, on paper, the person checks the boxes, right? That's the easy part. But I think that there's no substitute for time and getting to know somebody. And so, as we're getting to know you, then what? I know what I like, and I maybe I'm ghosting you because I know what I like and you're not it. Like, and what about at that point? No? What do y'all think about that statement? That if you know what you want more, then you don't have to ghost. I don't know. Because if I know what I want and I know you're not it, then, right, the sooner the better. No? Right? If you check all the boxes and I meet a guy and he, after the third phone call and on the first FaceTime says, oh, I don't travel, I'm just going to stay on the block. I know what I like, and I know that because you don't travel and you want to stay on the block, you're small-minded, this ain't it for me. So I feel like I ghost you because maybe I do know what I want. I don't know. I'm just posing the opposite question, right? Maybe ghosting is about knowing exactly what you want. No? Okay, so you're ghosting somebody now because you're not compatible and the conversations are dry. It's mutual. I mean, I get it. That I feel like that's a good reason. The last person that I ghosted, I ghosted him because I had met him online, and when I met him in person, he was shorter than I expected him to be. And I don't mind short guys. Let's say that. I'm not one of them that needs somebody that's like 6'5", 6'4". I don't mind shorter guys. But he seemed shorter in person, like little fingers, arms, like that's not nice. But that wasn't the only reason. In addition to that, he just seemed like he was like so, like he hated life. Like I was asking him like how his day was, and it just seemed like he had like a miserable day and a miserable life, and he hates everything in his life. And I'm like, but to also not be doing something about it, because then I said, well, okay, so you don't like what you're doing now, like what would you rather be doing? But then when I asked, like, well, why aren't you doing that? And to not really have I don't know, it just didn't work with me. I got enough craziness in my life. I don't come over here with the bad energy. And that's when I just like never talked to him again. Yeah, I think ghosting is going to continue. Like somebody said, depending on what I want and their wants. Right. It's possible. I think ghosting actually happens from knowing what you do want. Unfortunately, I think ghosting happens from knowing what you do want, and sometimes, depending on right, like how long you got that been talking, their inability to know how to communicate and have those difficult conversations. But I'm still going to stick to my rule that if the person would be concerned about your safety, you owe them a conversation. If it's early enough that they would assume that you ghosted them, then Do you guys have any questions? That's all I have for today. I think the takeaway is you guys can continue to ghost if it's early on, but not after you have sex or spend money or invest a considerate amount of time. That was the takeaway. And preferably communicate it, but communicate it in a way that is respectful, of course. And if you do ghost, right, sometimes it's a matter of you not being confident and able to have those difficult conversations. That's something that you need to work through. Like, it's a you thing. And that the other thing, like, and I mentioned this last week, like, if you are going to ghost somebody, right, for a reason, make sure that the thing that you are ghosting them for, the thing that you really feel like you dislike, one, that is really there, or are you projecting a past experience on somebody, right? Do you have enough evidence, so to speak, that this conclusion that you've come to is real, right? So before you cut them off, make sure that what you think is happening is real. Like, you saw one little thing, like, oh, he not going to, you might have made that up. But then also, like, really ask, like, is that really going to have a long-term impact on your relationship? And I think those are important before you decide that this isn't somebody that you're no longer interested in. Or is this just like a you thing that you need to work through? Any other questions? I always appreciate you guys from joining the conversation live. Next week, I am sitting down with the Roundtrees. They have started multiple businesses with each other. So we're going to talk about entrepreneurship with your partner. They've also been married for 1 billion years. So I'm going to get all in their business because they've been together since like teenagers. And I feel like that's a long time to look at somebody. So that's what we're talking about next week on Sunday, the 3rd. We're sitting down with the Roundtrees and talking about entrepreneurship. So partnership in terms of a romantic relationship and business partners. And I hope that you guys will continue to join us on this transformative journey. Thanks so much for joining us, guys. Any other questions? Nope. Well, you guys have a good night, and I will see you on Sunday.